Welcome to the deep dive. So, if you're maybe considering a move or even just a longer business trip to Shanghai, well, one of the big questions is probably rent. What's the deal?
Yeah, it can feel pretty overwhelming, like you're trying to learn a whole new system, right?
Totally. So, our mission today is basically to cut through that noise. We want to give you a clear, practical picture of Shanghai's rental market.
Exactly. And for this, we've been looking at some really helpful material from moveandstay.com.
Ah, right.
Yeah, these guys, they've been helping expats and business folks find rentals across Asia for, wow, over 25 years now.
25 years. That's some serious experience.
It really is.
Oh.
Day, week, month rentals, they've seen it all. So their insights into Shanghai, well, they're pretty valuable. We're aiming to pull out the key stuff you really need to know.
Okay, let's get into it then. Shanghai rent. What kind of ballpark figures are we actually looking at? I imagine it varies quite a bit.
Oh, absolutely. Huge range. It really depends on, the usual suspects, location, size, and the quality of the
All
place.
right.
So if you're thinking, say, a one-bedroom apartment right in the city center, Movie and Stay's data suggests you could be looking at, maybe 5,000 up to 12,000 a month.
Okay, 5 to 12,000 RMB. And
Mhm.
just for context, how does that translate roughly?
Well, the article mentioned a rough guide of about 1,000 US dollars being somewhere around the 1,600 US.
Sure.
So, do the math from there, maybe 725 to 1740 US roughly.
Gotcha. So even for one bedroom, that's a pretty wide bracket just based on where it is in the center. What if you're okay looking, a bit further out?
Yeah, movie just outside that core definitely helps the budget. For a similar one-bed place, you might see prices from 3,000 maybe up to 6,250 per month.
Okay, that's a noticeable difference.
It is. And naturally, if you need more room, like a three-bedroom place.
Right. For a family or sharing.
Exactly. In the city center, that could jump to anywhere between 15,000 and 32,000 a month. Quite a leap.
Wow.
But if you look outside the center for that three-bedroom, it becomes more like, say, 6,500 to 16,000. Still significant, but, more manageable, perhaps.
Okay, so location, 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 as they say. It really seems to be the main driver here. Are there specific districts within the center that are known for being particularly pricey?
Oh, for sure. Even within the central areas, some spots command, well, top dollar. You've
Okay.
got places like the Bund, obviously, with those amazing views.
Iconic. Yeah.
Pudong, the big financial hub. And then the French concession, always popular, very charming with the old architecture.
I've heard about the French concession. Beautiful. Right.
Absolutely. Tree-lined streets, lots of character.
Yeah.
But yeah, living in any of those prime spots, you're paying a premium. It's not just central location. It's the vibe, the convenience, the amenities,
Mhm.
the whole package.
That makes total sense. It's the desirability factor.
So beyond the address, what else really bumps the rent up or down? Size, obviously.
Size is a big one, yeah. Square meters cost money. But then it's also about the building itself. Is it a modern high-rise with a gym, pool, maybe a doorman?
All the bells and whistles.
Exactly.
Mhm.
That's going to cost more than, say, an older walk-up building with fewer amenities.
And the apartment's condition is huge, too. Has it been renovated recently? Is it furnished? Especially for people using services like moveandstay.com for shorter or medium stays, furnished is often a big plus.
Makes sense, saves a lot of hassle.
Definitely. And believe it or not, even the floor level can play a part. Higher floors sometimes cost a bit more. Better views, maybe less noise.
Interesting. Okay, this is a really key question, I think. How does Shanghai compare? If you're thinking about, I don't know, London, New York, other big global cities?
Yeah, good question. Based on Move-In Stay's info, Shanghai can actually be, surprisingly, a bit more affordable in some respects compared to, say, London or New York. Especially if you look slightly outside the absolute core or for larger apartments.
Really? Okay.
But if you compare to other big cities in Asia, like Bangkok or Kuala Lumpur, Shanghai generally comes out more expensive for similar housing.
Right. So more expensive than some neighbors, potentially cheaper than some Western hubs.
Kind of, yeah. But you also have to remember the overall cost of living, right? Transport, food, all that stuff needs to factor into your comparison too.
Good point. It's never just about the rent figure. Okay,
Okay.
so let's say you're there, you're looking. What kinds of places are you actually going to find? What are the main types of accommodation?
Shanghai's got a really diverse mix. You'll definitely see lots of city center apartments, super popular with expats, professionals, people who want that convenient.
Close to work, close to everything.
Exactly. And these can be in older buildings, sometimes with loads of character, or in brand new modern towers. And often, especially those geared towards shorter stays, like the ones Move and Stay might list, they come fully furnished, which is super handy.
Yeah, move-in ready. What about those like traditional homes you mentioned, maybe in the French concession? They sound intriguing.
They really are. Unique architecture, real sense of history. But the flip side, as the move and stay material kind of suggests, is they might lack some modern comforts.
Okay, like older plumbing or smaller kitchens, maybe?
Potentially, yeah.
Hmm.
Spaces might be smaller, maybe need a bit more maintenance. So you get the amazing atmosphere, but you might trade off some practicality.
And then the total opposite end of the spectrum, the shiny new high-rises.
Right. Those usually come with everything.
Mm.
Gyms, pools, security, the works. Apartments are often spacious, well-designed,
Hmm.
but they also tend to have the higher price tags.
Naturally.
And they're often in those up-and-coming areas, which can be exciting too, seeing a neighborhood develop.
So it really comes down to priorities, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Location, space, budget, amenities. What matters most to you? Okay, let's shift gears slightly. The money side again. Because that number, the advertised rent, it's not the whole story, is it?
Not even close. That sticker price is just the start. Move-in stays info really highlights this. You've absolutely got to factor in other costs. Management fees, for instance.
Right. What do those usually cover?
Typically building upkeep. Security, maybe cleaning of common areas, landscaping if there is any. For, let's say, an average 85 square meter place, you might be looking at 250 to 800 extra per month just for that.
Okay, so definitely need to ask what's included.
Crucial. Get it clear, get it in writing in the lease. What exactly are you paying for?
Good tip. And I've also heard that paying rent way in advance is sometimes a thing in Shanghai.
That's another really important heads up. It's definitely not uncommon for landlords to ask for, say, 2 or 3 months rent up front, sometimes even more, in addition to the deposit.
Wow, okay. So that initial outlay could be pretty substantial.
It really could. You need to be prepared for that financially. And then, of course, you've got your monthly utilities on top of everything.
Right, the basics. Electricity, water, gas, internet. What's the damage there, roughly?
Electricity can vary a lot, depending on your AC use in summer, heating in winter.
Yeah.
But maybe budget 300 to 800 a month.
Okay.
Water's usually cheaper, maybe 50 to 150. Gas, if you have it for cooking or heating, could be another 100 to 300.
And internet. Gotta have internet.
Absolutely. Broadband, probably around 100 to 200 a month for a decent connection. So yeah, add all those up and always double check the lease sometimes. Rarely, some utilities might be included, but usually not.
Right. Factor it all in. Okay, we know the costs. How do people actually find these places? What's the process like?
Well, for newcomers, especially if you don't speak Mandarin, using a real estate agent can be a lifesaver. A good agent knows the market, can find places matching your criteria, help with negotiations.
Sounds helpful. Any downsides?
The main thing is you need to choose carefully. Get recommendations, check reviews if you can. And remember, the commission, usually it's about 1 month's rent. So another upfront cost to budget for.
Okay. What if you want to try searching yourself? Any popular websites or apps?
Yeah, definitely. Move and Stay's material mentions platforms like Smart Shanghai. That's a big one. And WeChat groups are also really common for finding listings.
WeChat. Interesting.
Yeah, lots of community groups, specific housing groups. You can browse, filter. Just, be a bit cautious. If a listing looks too good to be true price-wise,
It probably is.
correct. Yeah.
Okay. And when you find a place, what are the sort of standard practices? Deposit. How's rent usually paid?
Okay, standard practice. Expect to pay a deposit, usually 1 or 2 months rent.
Okay.
Rent payment, as we mentioned, is often quarterly, 3 months at a time. Though you might be able to negotiate monthly, it's less common.
Right. Worth asking, though.
Always worth asking.
Mm.
Using agents is very common, as we said. The really critical part is understanding that lease agreement, read it thoroughly, and try to verify the landlord is legitimate.
Okay, so quick cost recap then. Deposit, first rent payment, maybe several months worth, potentially an agent fee, plus utility deposits later. It adds up. Now, any tips for actually getting the place you want, maybe even getting a better deal? Negotiation.
Negotiation is definitely expected. It's common practice. Don't feel like you have to accept the first price offered.
Okay, good to know.
Be polite, obviously, but be firm. Know what you're willing to pay. And critically, do your homework. See what similar places in the area are renting for. That gives you leverage.
Right, having comparable prices.
Exactly. You can also maybe gently point out any flaws or downsides of the apartment. Timing can sometimes help too. Renting during off-peak seasons might give you a bit more bargaining power.
And being ready to move quickly.
Yes. Having your paperwork sorted, being decisive landlords like tenants who are serious and ready to go, shows you're reliable.
Makes sense. And that lease agreement, again, It sounds like paying close attention is vital.
Absolutely non-negotiable. Read every single line. Make sure you understand it all. If possible, get an English version or have someone you trust translate it properly.
What are the key things to look for?
Payment terms, how much, when is it due, the lease length, obviously, any break clause conditions under which you or the landlord can end the lease early, and responsibilities for maintenance, who fixes what if something breaks.
Crucial details. Get it all clear. And those upfront costs we keep mentioning, just to reiterate, they can be quite chunky, right?
They really can. You've got the security deposit could be 1, 2, even 3 months rent, plus the first rent payment itself, which might also be multiple months. Agent fee, if you use one, usually 1 month's rent. Platforms like Smart Shanghai are often quite transparent about agent fees, which helps. And then the utility deposit, maybe 500 to 1,000. It's a significant initial hit.
Definitely need to plan for that cash flow. What about this FAPIO thing I sometimes hear about?
Ah, yes, the FAPIO. If your company is reimbursing your rent, they'll almost certainly require an official FAPIO, which is basically a tax invoice. You need to ask your landlord for this. Just be aware. Sometimes landlords charge a small percentage fee, maybe 3–5%, to issue it.
Okay, another small thing to factor in if you need reimbursement. Now let's talk neighborhoods. Where do people actually live? What are the popular spots and what's the vibe? Expensive areas first.
Right, the prime spots often favored by expats. You're looking at districts like Jian, Zhui, and Huangpu. Really central, great mix of old and new, tons of restaurants, shops, easy transport.
And the former French concession falls in there.
Exactly. It overlaps mainly with Zhuhui and Huangpu. Super desirable, that architecture, those leafy streets.
Yeah.
But yeah, expect to pay a premium for that privilege.
Okay. What about if the budget is a bit tighter? Where can you find more affordable options?
You can definitely find better value if you look a bit further out. The sort of border districts, maybe just outside the inner ring road, you often get more space for your money there.
And commuting isn't too bad.
Shanghai's public transport is generally excellent. Metro system is extensive, so commuting from slightly further out is usually quite doable. The Move Stay info mentioned Putuo district as one example that tends to be more affordable.
Okay, Putu. Good to have a name. Are there also, like, up-and-coming areas, places that are developing fast?
Yes, absolutely. Shanghai is constantly changing. There are definitely emerging districts that offer a mix of maybe slightly lower rents now, but lots of potential. You often find newer buildings, modern amenities there.
Kind of getting in before prices shoot up.
Potentially, yeah. It can be exciting living in an area that's actively transforming. Pudong New Area, for example, parts of it beyond the main financial zone are still developing and could offer opportunities.
So lots of options. Really depends on your personal mix of budget, commute tolerance, and what kind of lifestyle you want.
Exactly. Best advice is always to explore different areas yourself if you can. Talk to people who live there, get a feel for the place.
Definitely. Okay, last big area, the legal side. This feels important, especially being in a different country. Any key legal points renters absolutely need to know?
Super important. Number one, verify your landlord. Seriously. Ask to see their ID card, their Shenfin Jin, and the property title certificate, the Fangshen.
Make sure they actually own the place.
Precisely. Check the names match. Trust your gut. If something feels off, be cautious. Really scrutinize that property certificate.
Okay. And the contract itself?
Read it like a hawk. Get that English version if possible. Make sure everything you agreed verbally is actually written down clearly. Rent amount, payment dates, deposit details, lease length, any break clause, who pays for what repairs.
All the details we discussed.
All of them. Don't sign until you're clear. Create a little checklist if you need to. Size, rent, payday, contract length, who pays management fees, etc.
And what about tenant rights in general in Shanghai? Is it different from, say, the US or Europe?
It's generally understood that Chinese rental law tends to favor the landlord a bit more. There aren't really specific laws against things like rental discrimination or caps on rent increases or deposit amounts like you might find elsewhere.
Okay, good to know.
Contracts often just say disputes should be handled through friendly negotiation. Key things for you as a tenant. Make sure the property is officially registered for rental property. This is often required for expats anyway.
Right.
Get everything in writing. Verbal agreements are risky. And just be mentally prepared for that request for several months' rent up front.
So being thorough is key. Maybe even get someone local to look over the contract.
Highly recommended if you can. A local friend who understands the nuances, or even a lawyer if it's a particularly high-value rental or complex situation. It's just good protection.
Okay. Wow. That was a lot, but incredibly useful. So let's try and summarize this deep dive. Rent in Shanghai, hugely variable, location is king.
Absolutely. And don't forget those extra cost management fees, utilities, they add up significantly.
Right. Understanding the market, maybe using an agent, definitely negotiating,
Mm.
and paying super close attention to that lease and the landlord's credentials are all essential.
And you've got a whole range of neighborhoods, from the pricey and popular expat hubs to more affordable border districts and emerging areas. Something for most budgets and lifestyles, if you look.
It really highlights how resources like moveandstay.com, with their decades of experience across Asia, can be so valuable for finding flexible, reliable places, especially for those shorter or medium-term stays. This info is great groundwork.
Definitely. And, thinking about Shanghai, it's such a dynamic city, always changing. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How will these rental trends evolve over the next few years?
That's a really interesting closing thought.
Yeah. What new hotspots might emerge? Will affordability change? What challenges or maybe new opportunities will pop up for people looking to live there, even just for a while? Something to keep an eye on for sure, depending on your own plans.